The transit authority had a file on me 3 inches thick. Late arrivals, 97. Route deviations, 43. Unnecessary emergency stops, 186. They were building a case to fire their problem driver, who treated every commute like a combat patrol. One supervisor said I acted like there were IEDs on Main Street. Funny thing about that, when infrastructure fails, concrete and steel become weapons too. Just ask the 47 people who aren't at the bottom of the river. My name is Master Sergeant Peter Kowalski, and I've been driving the number 42 bus route through Cincinnati for 3 years. Before that, I spent 28 years in the Army Transportation Corps, moving convoys through Iraq, Afghanistan, and every other place where roads were suggestions and bridges were maybe there maybe not propositions. I've driven through 117 ambushes, hit 4 IEDs, and learned that the difference between life and death is usually about 5 seconds of observation. But try explaining that to civilian commuters who just want to get to work on time. Route 42 runs from the suburbs through downtown, crossing the Riverside Bridge twice each morning. It's a 1960s concrete and steel arch bridge, carries 50,000 vehicles daily, and gets inspected annually by people who spend more time on paperwork than looking at actual concrete. I know because I read every inspection report. Another paranoid habit that got me mocked in the break room. My problem started day 1. First route, first run, I stopped 200 feet before a railroad crossing despite no signals. Why? The tracks had a slight buckle that reminded me of pressure plate wides. Took me 30 seconds to assess. Made us 2 minutes late. What the hell was that? Demanded Janet Morrison, a regular who'd become my chief critic. The gates weren't even down. Precautionary assessment, I replied. Precautionary my ass. You made me late. That became the pattern. I'd stop for things nobody else noticed. A van parked too long near a bus stop. Construction that changed traffic patterns. Weather conditions that affected bridge surfaces. Kids gathered where kids shouldn't gather. Each stop was documented, complained about, reported to management. The YouTube videos started after month 2. Paranoid Pete strikes again, showing me checking under the bus before routes. World's slowest bus driver, featuring my bridge approach protocols. Pete's greatest hits, a compilation of passenger complaints recorded on phones. My favorite comment, dude thinks he's still in Iraq looking for roadside bombs LOL. Yeah, LOL. Except I was in Iraq. I did look for roadside bombs. Found them too. The burnt shell of Thompson's Humvee is a permanent reminder that paranoia keeps people alive. My supervisor, Marcus Webb, was a decent guy trying to manage a problem he didn't understand. Pete, I get it, he said during one of our monthly meetings. Military habits die hard, but this is Cincinnati, not Kandahar. You're scaring passengers, creating delays, generating complaints. I've got city councilors asking why Route 42 is always late. Because I do the job safely, I said. No, because you do the job like you're expecting an attack. That's not normal. Normal. That word followed me everywhere. Normal bus drivers don't carry emergency medical supplies beyond the basic first aid kit. Normal bus drivers don't inspect their vehicles like they're preparing for a convoy. Normal bus drivers don't memorize every passenger's face and typical behavior patterns. But normal bus drivers haven't pulled burning bodies from vehicles hit by RPGs. Normal bus drivers haven't held pressure on wounds while waiting for medevac. Normal bus drivers sleep through the night without replaying every close call that almost killed their squad. The file grew thicker. October 15th. Refused to cross Riverside Bridge during wind gusts of 35 mph. Excessive caution regarding weather conditions. November 2nd. Evacuated bus due to unattended backpack. Overreaction to common situation. December 10th. Deviated from route to avoid construction zone. Unauthorized route modification. Each incident came with passenger complaints. Janet Morrison wrote letters. Brad Hutchins started a petition. Someone made t-shirts. I survived Pete's bus route. The local news did a segment on the city's most cautious driver, complete with hidden camera footage of me doing a full walk-around inspection before each route. "It's embarrassing," one passenger told the reporter. "He treats us like we're in constant danger. It's public transit, not a war zone." Dr. Patricia Vance from the VA called it hypervigilance, said it was common in combat veterans. Offered to write a letter to my employer explaining PTSD symptoms. I declined. I wasn't sick. I was experienced. There's a difference. The thing about infrastructure is it doesn't fail gradually, it fails suddenly. But it whispers warnings first if you know how to listen. I knew how to listen. 28 years of keeping soldiers alive taught me that survival is about pattern recognition, about noticing what doesn't belong, about trusting your gut when your brain says something's wrong. The Riverside Bridge whispered to me all winter. It started with vibrations, subtle changes in how the bus felt crossing the expansion joints. Then came the sounds creaking that lasted a half-second too long, rumbles that felt deeper than traffic noise. I documented everything, reported it all. The responses were predictable. Annual inspection showed no significant issues. Within normal parameters. No action required. On February 20th, I refused to cross during morning rush hour. The bridge was making a sound I'd heard before, in Mosul, minutes before an overpass collapsed from structural damage. Forced 47 angry passengers to disembark and take the detour route. The video went viral. Paranoid Pete finally loses it. The transit authority suspended me for 3 days. "This can't continue," Marcus said when I returned. "I've fought for you, Pete. I really have. Your service record, your safety record, I respect that. But the city's ready to terminate. The mayor's office is involved now. You've got 1 more month to show you can drive normally." "Define normally," I said, "without treating every bridge like it's about to explode." I wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or explain that bridges don't care about politics or passenger schedules or viral videos. Bridges care about load limits and metal fatigue and concrete cancer, and a dozen other factors that nobody thinks about until 50,000 pounds of steel and humanity are falling into a river. But I just nodded and said I'd try to be more normal. March 8th was crisp and clear. Perfect visibility. Light traffic. I picked up my regular 6:45 a.m. crowd, the early shift workers, the downtown office people, the students. Janet Morrison sat in her usual seat, already on her phone, probably tweeting about whatever delay I'd caused today. We were running on time for once. No stops, no deviations, no paranoid Pete moments. Passengers were actually smiling. Someone commented that maybe I'd finally gotten over my issues. Then we approached Riverside Bridge. The whisper had become a scream. Every instinct, every hour of training, every close call I'd survived was firing signals in my brain. The bridge approach felt wrong, a shimmy in the roadway that shouldn't exist, a vibration frequency that meant structural harmonic resonance. I stopped the bus 500 feet from the bridge entrance. The explosion of anger was immediate. "For fuck's sake, Pete. Not again. I'm calling the mayor. This is insane." Janet Morrison was on her feet. "I've had enough. Drive the goddamn bus or I'll drive it myself. This paranoid bullshit ends now." I turned to face 47 furious people. 47 people who thought danger was something that happened to other people in other places. 47 people who were about to hate me even more. "Everyone off the bus," I said calmly. "Now." "You can't be serious," Brad Hutchins said. "You're having another episode." "Off the bus." "I'm not moving," Janet declared. "Fire me from this bus. I dare you. I'll own the transit authority when my lawyer's done." I stood up, using my full 6'3" frame and command voice. "This is an emergency evacuation. Move to the exits immediately. Leave your belongings. Move now." Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the look in my eyes, but they moved. Cursing, threatening, recording on their phones, but they moved. 47 people stumbled onto the sidewalk, their morning commute ruined by paranoid Pete's biggest overreaction yet. "You're done," Janet spat. So fucking done. I hope you enjoy unemployment, you crazy. The sound cut her off. A crack like thunder, like the earth breaking, like every nightmare I'd had about failing to keep people safe. The Riverside Bridge didn't collapse dramatically. It sagged first, like a tired soldier taking a knee. The center span dropped maybe 3 feet, concrete spalling off in chunks. Cars that were crossing skidded, collided, stopped. For 5 seconds, it held that position, wounded but standing. Then physics took over. The center support pier, weakened by decades of water erosion that inspections had missed or ignored, gave way completely. 800 feet of concrete and steel folded into the river with a roar that shook windows a mile away. 17 vehicles went down with it. The bus would have been in the center span. 47 people would have had a 40-foot fall into freezing water trapped inside a metal box. The survival rate would have been 0. My passengers stood frozen, phones still recording but hands shaking. Janet Morrison's face had gone white. Brad Hutchins was on his knees. Someone was crying, someone else was praying. "Holy shit," a student whispered. "Holy fucking shit." I sat down on the curb, suddenly exhausted. 3 years of hypervigilance, of being mocked and threatened and documented. 3 years of knowing something bad was coming, but not knowing what or when. 3 years of being paranoid Pete had led to this moment. 47 people standing on solid ground instead of drowning in the Ohio River. The aftermath was chaos. Emergency responders, news crews, investigators. 17 dead from the vehicles that went down. A tragedy, but it could have been 64. The security footage showed everything: my bus stopping, passengers evacuating, the bridge failing 45 seconds later. The margin between life and death measured in seconds, and one driver's paranoia. The file they'd been building to fire me became evidence of a different story. Every report I'd filed about bridge vibrations. Every documented concern about structural integrity. Every overreaction that in hindsight looked like pattern recognition. The investigation would reveal systemic inspection failures, deferred maintenance, and political pressure to keep a failing bridge operational. But that came later. In the moment on that sidewalk, my passengers struggled to process their survival. Janet Morrison approached me slowly, like I might bite. "Pete, how did you know?" "I didn't know," I said honestly. "I just knew something was wrong. That's all I ever know. Something's wrong, and my job is to keep people safe until we figure out what." She started crying then. Ugly, body-shaking sobs. "I have kids, 3 kids, I almost." "If you hadn't." "But I did." One by one, they came over. Apologies, tears, confusion. How do you process hating someone for 3 years only to realize that hatred almost killed you? How do you reconcile mocking someone's paranoia when that paranoia just saved your life? Brad Hutchins still had his "I survived Pete's bus route" t-shirt on. He looked at it, then at me, then took it off and threw it in a trash can. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I'm so fucking sorry." The transit authority didn't know what to do with me. The hero narrative didn't fit their paperwork. I was simultaneously their most complained about driver and the man who'd prevented their worst disaster. They offered me commendations, promotions, a desk job coordinating safety protocols. I turned it all down. I just wanted to drive my bus. But driving was different now. The passengers were different. Some of my regulars couldn't get back on the trauma of almost dying too fresh. Others became my fierce defenders. Janet Morrison started a Facebook group, "Pete's People Alive," because he cared. It has 10,000 members now, all sharing stories of drivers, security guards, and safety officers who were mocked for being too careful until the day careful saved lives. New passengers sometimes ask about the empty frame on my dashboard. It used to hold my termination paperwork, the file they'd built to fire their problem driver. Now it holds something else. A photo of 47 people standing on a sidewalk, alive and angry, 45 seconds before they understood why paranoia and preparation are sometimes the same thing. I still do my full inspections. Still stop for suspicious packages. still refuse to cross bridges when conditions feel wrong. The difference is nobody complains anymore. They wait. They watch. They trust that paranoid Pete sees dangers they don't, because I do see them. That's my curse and my purpose. I see the potential for catastrophe in everyday moments, feel the weight of lives in my hands every time I turn the key. Some call it PTSD. Some call it hypervigilance. I call it 28 years of learning that the worst thing you can imagine is usually not as bad as what actually happens when you stop being careful. The Riverside Bridge has been rebuilt now. Modern engineering, better inspections, political promises that it won't happen again. I cross it twice every morning on Route 42, and yes, I still slow down, still listen, still feel for whispers of danger that others miss. My passengers don't roll their eyes anymore. They hold their breath, waiting for my assessment, trusting my judgment. When I accelerate onto the bridge, they relax. Pete says it's safe. Pete's paranoia says we can cross. The new riders don't understand the dynamic at first. Why does everyone get quiet at the bridge? Why does the driver slow down? Why do some passengers touch that empty picture frame like it's a talisman? You must be new, Janet Morrison tells them. Let me explain about our driver. His name is Pete, and he's going to do things that seem crazy. But 47 people are alive because of his crazy, so we trust it. When Pete stops, we stop. When Pete says evacuate, we run. Because Pete sees things we don't, and thank God for that. They usually look skeptical until they Google Cincinnati Bridge collapse bus driver. Then they understand. Then they become believers in the church of appropriate paranoia. Marcus Webb still supervises me. He doesn't mention my file anymore. The 3-inch stack of complaints that documented exactly what a good driver should do when infrastructure whispers warnings. He just nods when I radio in my stops, my checks, my overreactions. Be safe out there, Pete, he says every morning. That's the plan, I reply. That's always the plan, because it is. Every stop, every inspection, every moment of hypervigilance is about one thing: making sure the people who trust me with their lives get where they're going, even if they hate me for it, even if they mock me, even if they build files to fire me. That's what 28 years in the Army teaches you. Mission first. The mission is safety. Everything else, comfort, convenience, on-time performance, is secondary. The jokes have mostly stopped. Paranoid Pete has been replaced with Pete the Prophet, or just Pete who knew. I don't care about the nicknames. I care about the empty frame on my dashboard that reminds me every day that the line between paranoia and prophecy is usually about 45 seconds. 45 seconds. The time between my evacuation order and the bridge collapse. The time between being a problem driver and a hero. The time between 47 complaints and 47 lives. That's all the time we had. But it was enough. Because paranoid is just another word for prepared, and prepared is just another word for alive.